Howdy, howdy. We are live on a Friday night with some more Star Trek Enterprise to talk about. We're going to close out season one. So get all the "it's been a long road" jokes out of the way. Yeah, so you can apply those song lyrics to pretty much any discussion of anything ever if you've been trying to make that joke for 23 years.
That's
but
the beauty.
Yeah, we're at the end of season one. So Dave, we got these 8 remaining episodes to discuss.
Yeah, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride for me tonight. I think it's going to be exciting.
We have some ups and downs. And, I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of intricacies to explore and all the in between as well. So
Yes, goo everywhere.
well, let's get to it then. I'm Fatheree,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 272nd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new. Tonight we are talking about Star Trek Enterprise Season 1, Part 3. This is Part 3 of the Season 1
Right.
discussion. Let me just start that over again for the podcast people. Tonight we are discussing Star Trek Enterprise Season 1, Episodes 19 through 26. So everything from Acquisition, the controversial Ferengi episode, Ferengis in the 22nd century hanging out with humans, oh my, all the way from that up to the Season 1 finale, Shockwave. And I'm discussing these with Dave, who has only just now revisited these early Enterprise episodes after seeing them many, many years ago.
Right, and the tail end is particularly hazy. I'm sure that and the first few of, or whatever I watched of season 2 are going to be hazy as well.
Yeah, so it'll be fun to discuss this. There's some interesting things that happened at the end of season 1. So some stuff that I feel like I've looked at some stuff here in new light, despite me, I've been rewatching these constantly for 20 years, like every
Well, it's,
episode of Star Trek, but
It's probably the first time you've ever taken some notes on them, I imagine, and then felt like, well, I'm going to be discussing this. What do I really think about it?
It is. I've watched Enterprise with a partner I lived with and with a roommate I lived with. But other than that, I really have never discussed the show in this level of detail. So it is fun to do. Before we get into that, just a little bit of housekeeping. I want to give a big thank you and shout out to the lovely Tex-Trek Patreon supporters who make the weekly live show possible. So thank you so much. Starfleet Sohel, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Daw, Geek Filter, Earl Grey Trekkie, Quark Spar, Stephanie Durantas, Braxton, Chuck A, and our anonymous supporters. We do like to celebrate with a monthly watch party. So we just had a fun one a few days ago. We watched the DS9 episode Visitor. It was a special occasion. We did a double feature. We did the Visitor, and then we did the Strange New Worlds episode, All Those Who Wonder, with Mbenga.
I'm laughing because this is some heavy episodes. Both of them are very intense episodes, but that was cool. Like, I feel like we kind of tend towards the lighter side of things with the watch-alongs, and I think that's cool. But this was a nice change-up.
Well, our next one will be February 17th. And I don't know, I like to do like the romantic-y type episodes in February for Valentine's
Trek
Day.
absolutely has some options there.
Yeah, I'd be curious if anyone has any suggestions, but I have one I'd like to throw out there, and that'd be the Someone to Watch Over Me? Is that the... The
Which one is
Voyager
that?
episode where the Doctor teaches Seven how to date, and in so doing discovers the feelings he has for her.
That sounds fun.
It's a great episode. Yeah, it's really good, I think. And I tend to not gravitate to like the I don't know the more like romance stories. So the quality of that one I think will just win over a lot of people. But we can discuss that more in the future.
For sure.
There's not really much news beyond two items. One Enterprise related. I'll save that for second. The first one, just real quick. The Skydance dude, David Ellison, his company Skydance looks like they're moving forward with their attempt to gain control of Paramount Global, which
Right.
that seems to be much more likely now than the possible merger with Discovery Warner. That deal does not seem to be moving forward, but this one does. So, or at least talks or whatever is in the works. But he'd basically be gaining control of Paramount Global and with a focus on making movies and TV shows. And Skydance, they do a lot of work with Paramount now. They help finance the Kelvin Star Trek movies and like the Mission Impossible movies and the Transformer movies, like a lot of the stuff that Mission Impossible, all that stuff. So they might have a hand in Top Gun. I don't know, but they're going to be wanting to make more content. He has an interest in TV as well, so I think they're probably going to be pushing for things like more Star Trek movies and Star Trek TV shows to continue. So
that's good. That's broadly good.
Yeah, just the ownership changing hands yet again, as it's continued to do from the very beginning when it was Desi and Lucy who owned it at the day one, and
it's just a little nerve-wracking until things tumble out.
Yeah, that seems to be everything.
Sure, yeah.
This is things that people say when they have anxiety. Everything's terrifying. It's like, is that reality, or is that just like chemicals in my brain, or both?
Well, like it's been nice to it's definitely different than the broad stability that we've had for the last 5-6 years or whatever.
It really hasn't been stable in a hot minute. So.
Oh, okay. You're more aware of the behind the scenes stuff than I am.
I'd say it's been pretty unstable since 2002, since these episodes of Enterprise aired. So.
Well, all streaming TV and and everything that's related to is definitely been in flux for some time, and feels like it's particularly in flux now. So.
But all that out of the way, the other item, Gary Graham, our Saval actor, who we won't discuss the character Saval. I guess he's mentioned. But he doesn't appear in any of these episodes that we're talking about.
No, that's true. That's true.
He's in the next one. He's in the first episode of season 2. But Gary Graham passed away this week. I never met him. I did see him at conventions. But he is also, I guess, well known for his Enterprise Blues band. He did some musical things. So if you watch Shuttlepod or listen to the Shuttlepod show, Dominic Keating and Connor Trenier's podcast, they have Gary Graham's one of his songs is their theme song.
He was also the lead on that Alien Nation TV show.
Yeah, he was in the Alien Nation show. So
basically playing the James Caan part. I gather, and I don't think we want to divert into this, but he was kind of a little like James Caan's character in real life. But I will say a talented actor, and I really like his portrayal of Saval. And Vulcans are not easy to pin down. It's weird, and I have a few thoughts on that regarding to Paul later on in our discussion today. But yeah, one less Vulcan.
But with that said, let's go ahead and get started, Dave. Let's talk about some wacky Ferengis.
Yes.
So, hashtag everybody loves Ferengis, right? But I don't know why I want to make that a hashtag, but I don't know. I want that to be hashtag everybody loves somebody, but on YouTube I put little hashtags. I don't know if anyone ever pays attention to them. Oh, do I want to give this away? I guess I already brought it up. But our Enterprise the series of discussions we've been doing. If you watch this on YouTube, I think the first one had a hashtag everybody loves Shran, and then the second one had a hashtag everybody still loves Shran, because we talked about him the last 2 weeks straight, and there's no Shran to talk about this week, Dave, but we do still have Jeffrey Combs in Ferengi form.
Right, yes.
So, but yeah, this first episode, Acquisition, teleplay by Maria Yakimetin and Andre Yakimetin, story by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga, directed by James Whitmore Jr. A group of interstellar thieves stun the Enterprise crew and begin looting the ship. Trip Tucker is the only one left to stop them, but can he do this in his underwear?
They get in their underwear quite a bit in this, in their blue underwear.
Yeah, like this. If I ask someone, hey, what does the underwear, like the standard issue underwear, look like in the original series or Deep Space Nine or Discovery, no one can tell me, but everyone knows the blue undies on Enterprise.
Yeah. It's a good look. Those actors it worked out, I can tell.
Well, yeah, it was an important part of the show's identity to show a lot of sexy people on a starship. But this episode ruffled a ton of feathers in 2002. Just hearing about it before they did it, one of the big things they were promising us was like, oh, we're going to do 22nd century stories, the stories that we couldn't do in the other shows because the technology is too advanced or whatever. We're going to tell stories you could only do here. And a lot of the tropes that you're tired of seeing, we're not going to have those anymore. And I've always been a Ferengi episode apologist. I love the Ferengi episodes. I heap tons of praise on many of them when Dave and I covered DS9, and I'll stand by many of them. I think a lot of them are great, but there was a big hatred of like Ferengi episodes in the fandom in 2002, and that it was just like, oh, the people were sick of seeing the Ferengi on DS9. So the fact that Enterprise had to return to that well immediately in season 1, it did not boost her confidence in the show.
This far removed from it, it doesn't feel controversial to me. I, of course, know the show does a little of what I think of as kind of the Smallville stuff. Is they sneak in early glimpses of lots of things that become core to the lore later on. And there's phase cannons will become phasers and shuttle pods will become shuttles and all of that stuff. And, I at least was vaguely aware of this even at the time, and I probably thought, I probably did think it was too soon to go back to that well. But Trek, honestly, nostalgia is part of Trek. It's at least, the shared world thing is kind of something that shows up in all of them. And sometimes they push it a little bit. At least it's like not everybody is related, like in Star Wars, They maybe stretched that a little bit in some of the Kelvin movies, but my general thoughts are I'm not worried about the controversy side of it. That doesn't impact me much at all, at least in the present. And I thought this was a solidly fun episode. That of what the Ferengi versus the 3-person Die Hard team, running around the ships, trying to figure out how to fight them without weapons.
I don't think it's a good episode. I think it was a big mistake to just be like, oh, they just bump into Ferengi, even because the Next Generation made such a big deal out of no one's ever met the Ferengi. And I know, like, real first contact with the Ferengi happened in 1947 in Roswell, but it's just, like, I wish they had, like, attempted to just have, like, some explanation of why, I don't know, Archer doesn't find out they're called Ferengi. Like, I get, like, he asked them at the very beginning, like, who are you? And Ethan Phillips, Neelix, plays the leader of Ferengi, Ulyss, and he's like, don't worry about it. But just, I wish, like, at some point, like, Archer's such, like, a curious explorer. I can't remember him, like not asking again at some point. But I've heard a suggestion that they should have had the Ferengi say they don't want to like leave their name, they don't want to leave their ID. So they should have just been like, oh, we're the Bolians, or oh, we're the just insert other start. We're the
that would have been funny if they like tried to throw some other race under the bus.
Yeah,
it does occur to me.
Headcanon that happened off screen because I love that idea so much.
There's a sense that. They don't. This would, of course, not really be the case that they would be going into so many of these first contacts and planet-side meetings and stuff like that with really no strong directives to guide them.
He just didn't write it down. He didn't jot it down. He didn't,
Right,
he didn't
right.
dot the
So
I's and cross the T's.
well, I'm saying that this really stretches that though.
Yeah.
Because T'Pol engaged with them, and like the Vulcans know about the Ferengi, right?
No.
Didn't that come up in another episode?
Yeah, they were like, "Have you ever heard of them?" And she said no.
Oh, okay. I thought that was one of those things where we were almost meant to assume she was doing a little Vulcan duplicity and just didn't want to.
Well, Enterprise Vulcan duplicity. That was another thing because people were pissed off the Vulcans have a reputation for dishonesty. So there was just a lot of feathers being ruffled with this first season. But like you, Dave, like I do have fun with this episode. It's one I look forward to rewatching, but I don't think it's good. I can't give them the Fatheree seal of approval. I do enjoy it.
I think it is a conventional portrayal of Ferengi. Really pretty obvious jokes. They're stealing everything. They backstab each other. But along the way, I had enough fun to say that I think it's a good episode. I would give it a light recommendation.
I recommend it if you're fans of the Ferengi because I think the Ferengi actors are so good at it. Because I mean, like they brought in like I guess like A-list for it. They were desperate. The show had been tanking in ratings at this point, like catastrophically. It started off with 10 million eyes on the pilot, and by this point they were, I think they were getting less than 3 million an episode before the end of season 1.
Wow.
So, which was an insane drop, and would a lot of shows that would be a death sentence because Star Trek has a history as like a big syndication property. I think that helped it get renewed for 4 seasons just so that it could be sold as a syndication thing after that. Get us 100 episodes so we can sell you off into syndication and pimp you out indefinitely. Back when people thought syndicated TV was, the business model of the future before streaming. But I mean, yeah, but that even translates, like streaming rights and everything. But yeah, I mean, like they were really desperate to do anything to try to get like attention on Enterprise, and here these last 8 episodes of season 1, we kind of see some gimmicky stuff. We see like some big, I don't know, stunt episodes we can call it, but like this, like we're gonna bring back Neelix and Brunt and Clint Howard and some other guy the purple shirt guy. I don't know the actor, but he's a good Ferengi. But I mean, like the other ones were all kind of like Star Trek veterans.
If people were kind of not really super into Ferengi, why would they think that would goose the ratings? Just pure nostalgia? Or is that typical of their...
I think it's because like it was like an easy episode to write. I think it was just like, oh, this is an easy, with the look of this alien is approved. We don't have to like go to the drawing board with like trying to develop like a new culture, a new makeup design. Does the studio like that makeup? Does the network like that makeup? They're like, oh, it's like, no, like, okay, the Ferengi work. We know how to write Ferengi jokes. Let's just do the Ferengi.
And that probably explains why they're so kind of conventionally written, is that they were there to be nostalgic and not really, because somebody had a great idea. Now that said, I want to give him a compliment on a few things. I actually really loved that Archer did a little bit of old-fashioned, what I think of as Kirk, slyness and stuff. I love that they're looking for the ship's vault.
Yeah.
And that made me laugh. And when he starts bargaining with them, when he leans into it, and he's like, okay, I've got the inklings of how to play these guys. And that stuff cracked me up
Archer's
a lot.
Smart. And that's something I want to praise these last 8 episodes on, is that Archer is like very naive and trusting, and he might come off as like a little dumb if he stayed that way the entire show, but after about half the season he does start to pick up on stuff, and we've seen that I think in a lot of season 1 where there's a bit of if they hadn't done that, I think we would have been like, man, this guy is just like an idiot, like he just sucks. Like, he can't even handle like a ship full of Ferengi,
Right. I think along with the ship being, really needing a lot of upgrades and work to get where they want it, it would feel they would feel too lame. Honestly,
it's risky, when you're doing like those early episodes where like they can't even shoot their torpedoes straight and stuff like that. It's risky doing that if you never have like a payoff to it.
Yeah. But I feel like even within the season, like you note, like Archer has evolved and has become a bit more sly. He's honestly just more experienced at dealing with stuff. He was a little wide-eyed and naive when he went out, and T'Pol has corrected him. Reality has corrected him. Um, Incidentally, Jill mentioned that this is a kind of a slow-going episode, and I will say, although I kind of liked the way it begins in media res and there it's untranslated for a while,
Yeah.
they spend a lot of time with Ferengi just looting, and it's not. I mean, we get the idea pretty quick, so they didn't really need to spend that much time.
It's really silly stuff. Like they just throw like an entire pie into a bag, and like the stuff that they're stealing is like, okay, we came here to get torpedoes and Travis's chair,
And they're stealing beakers and stuff.
and a dog. Put the dog in.
I mean, I think that's funny, though. I think that's fun.
When Clint Howard is like trying to explain to the guy in the purple shirt. The Ferengi is Grish, but I don't know the actor. But Clint Howard is Muck. I think he's like, oh, it's a lower life form. So whenever my dog aggravates me or something, I'm making fun of him. I tell him like, oh, you're just a lower life form. What do you know? This type of arguments I have with my dog.
Also, in the comments, Joel mentioned that they used the Ferengi whip much better this time, and I honestly
love that. Oh, I
it's
love
so cool.
that moment. That's whenever I watch this episode, I look forward to seeing Ethan Phillips whip Connor Trenier with the Ferengi energy whip. Just whenever people are like talking shit about Neelix, and people are like the Neelix haters, they're like, oh, I can't stand Neelix, such a terrible character on Voyager. I want to send Ethan Phillips in Ferengi form with the energy whip, like after the Neelix haters. Like, do you still think I suck now? And
Yeah, that had to be fun for him. And by the way, he looks kind of cool. Like their Ferengi looks were pretty solid. Everybody looked different enough to, differentiate him. And he had a cool kind of coat rolling. He was rolling with.
And he played a Ferengi in Next Generation.
TNG?
In Menage a Troy, he tried to abduct Counselor Troy and her mom. And Picard did like the Shakespeare pose where he stuck his arm out and it got made into a meme.
Oh, that's funny. I thought that the Archer's comment on when he's hearing the rules of acquisition, and he says he's like, back on my homeworld, that kind of thinking almost destroyed our civilization, is a pretty harsh side eye to capitalism. With a funny response from the guy saying you should have managed your business better.
Oh, and I like that they don't have like all the rules yet. Like some of them.
There's not as many.
Yeah, there was like a different. I forgot the exact numbers, but
I think I saw some note about it, and it's like there's like 80 or something that are added by the time that they're talking about it in TNG, or 60, or like it's a pretty big number.
I'm sure every time there's like a new expansion pack, you have to like pay for it to learn. Like if you want to get access to the new rules first, you have to pay for that.
Microtransactions. You don't even get them all; you get them individually.
But I don't have. I guess I just, as someone who like really loves the sets of Star Trek Enterprise, I think we get to see them like walk around these beautiful sets a lot. But I mean, you kind of get a little bit of that in every episode. I think Trip and Archer when they're kind of coming up with like the ruse on the fly with like oh, my wife Hoshi, like oh, your wife is only worth 10 bars, but I'll give you 12 and okay 15, and like I don't know, then they start fighting and all of that stuff. I like that. It's kind of like in the Andorian incident when they have that shorthand where they can kind of just kind of slip into deception mode and like they'll it's like they can do like improv together. It's like they can yes and their way to trick their enemies.
Right, they're pretty good at that stuff. Not as slow as Spock was in A Piece of the Action. Right. Fatheree, let me just mention one or two things real quick. One, I kind of like that they goofed around a little bit about the decontamination chamber, where, they're starting to have a little bit of fun with it. I think knowing that it was a little bit of the butt of some jokes. I liked T'Pol got like a triple phase pistol takedown, which was pretty cool. And I also thought that it was fun that she got to be a little mischievous about like letting Archer out of his out of his cuffs or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That felt like a TOS ending or something that would have had that quirky music.
She also had that funny moment with Trip when she wakes up and she sees him standing in his underwear over all the knocked out women.
Right.
And he's like, it's not what it looks like.
But yeah, I think that's all my rando comments. Let's move on.
Cool. Well, if you had fun seeing Neelix, let's visit Odo in Oasis. Teleplay by Stephen Beck, story by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga and Stephen Beck, directed by James Charleston. The crew finds a derelict spaceship from which they can salvage some supplies. Only they find that the ship is not quite as deserted as they were led to believe.
Fatheree, that still frame you have of the trader guy from the beginning is really, like, it looks really good. Even though, I mean, it's obviously a guy in makeup, but it's nice makeup.
I hate his name because it's D''MARR, and you say it like Damar, but it's hard to...
He ain't no Damar.
Distinguish that from...
DS9.
DAMAR, Damar.
Yeah. Well, the difference is this guy, what's the drink? Canar?
Yeah, he's drinking tea instead.
This is a dinar without Canar.
That's what we should have named our podcast, is Drinking Iced Tea with Archer. Archer's Iced Tea in chat. That's what we're going with, Archer's Iced Tea.
We assume he's drinking sweet tea, right?
No, Archer doesn't drink sweet teas.
Does he not?
No, he's not from the South.
Yeah, that's right. I guess I think Trip would be doing that. Yeah, well, that's literally, I'm drinking unsweet tea right now.
Archer was born in New York and then grew up in San Francisco.
Well, I approve. I'm not a coffee guy, so I couldn't get on board Janeway's beverage of choice. But I am an unsweet tea guy. I'm the one holdout in the South.
I'm drinking coffee right now at 7:30 p.m.
All right, Janeway.
But I at the time, this guy annoyed me because I was like, man, he has such a cool, elaborate design. He's got like this dragon egg head looking thing, but like, I would so much rather have just seen like a Tellarite or a Bolian or like any, like, why not just give me like a familiar Trek species, Rick and Brandon? Like, shouldn't they be meeting, like, I don't know, those are the people I want to see them meet. I mean, like, this guy looks cool, but I don't care about them meeting this guy.
Well, he's basically just there to hand them off to the ghost ship. Yeah, I would have preferred it too. I guess they weren't quite as into their TOS homages yet. That took a couple seasons to get there, to their callbacks.
But he let them know about the ghost ship or the hologram ship. So. That's kind of cool. I like him as like a kind of like the framing device, or kind of like the introduction to as like, oh well, I was just passing by, but he seems to really believe it. So you're like, man, is this guy like full of shit, or is he just trying to trick us, or like, is he superstitious? Does he really believe this? Then you come to like, but I don't know. What if it is true? What if they are ghosts, or it might not be ghosts. This is Star Trek. They don't get supernatural, but it might be something going on. So it's.
Yeah, I like derelict ship stories.
Well, how do you like this one, like, overall?
Not that well.
Yeah, I am not a fan of this episode either. But I'll say this: I kind of look forward to watching it more now than ever before, because not only do we get Renee Auberjonois back, but we also get Annie Wershing, our late Borg queen.
Right,
so,
right. Go ahead.
It's interesting that her first job and her last job were both Star Trek, and she had like a pretty big career in between, over 20 years.
Yeah, that is pretty cool for we Trekkies to have her there, kind of bookending it. Yeah, Fatheree, this is what you would call a really conventional kind of Trek plot. I think it's redeemed a little bit by Renee Auberjonois' his acting, and there's some solid spooky moments, but we at some pretty not too far into it, we're starting probably to expect something at least like what was revealed. Maybe not the specifics, but something like it. And, it plays out about like you'd expect.
Yeah, and it's more of that Enterprise derivativeness, where it felt like they were using so many recycled plots that Voyager kind of started to feel like for a bit, and then we were getting more of it in Enterprise. I keep projecting myself back to the time, it's hard to divorce myself from the feelings I had on these episodes the first time I watched them. But I mean, here, for example, though, what you're talking about it with it being like so conventional, it does make it anticlimactic when there is, not really much of a twist or anything. And there's a trend of a lot of anticlimactic Enterprise episodes where they just are kind of so like paint by numbers. But I'll agree with you that Renee's performance, like it really elevates like that moment of the episode, when he gives his speech, like, oh, I totally buy that he is this, this grieving dude, the grieving engineer on his ship who had to make that choice. Do I save my daughter even though it'll damn the rest of my ship? And he did, and then he tried to like bring them back as ghosts, and he doesn't want to face the consequences of that. He doesn't want to destroy the comfortable world, not exactly a happy world, but a comfortable world for him and his daughter to exist in. And it's like the Tempest. It's like, Shakespearean stuff, but whatever. But it's like, but it's just like a moment that I kind of feel that. And overall, the entire episode, it's very like low stakes. It's just like, oh, this guy didn't want to go home, but
it's low stakes,
and
her flirtation with Trip is kind of cheesy. Nothing really notable about it.
But I like did you not like the chemistry between them though? I thought Connor
it was okay,
and Annie Wershing, I thought they were really good. Like I got into it.
I wish they had better I think scripting to give it some little more oomph.
I was happy for her because it seemed like, oh, Trip was like the guy that she needed. Like she needed to meet like this like really nice guy. It's kind of like, I don't know, like the first dude who ever she had any type of like flirtation with. I'm glad it was like this nice guy like Trip and not like an asshole or whatever. And now I think like she'll be like, now that she's like gonna go into society for the first time, I think she's gonna have like a lot more confidence, and she's got like a good like head start. So I'll say that I'm kind of happy with how her storyline ends at the end. That was kind of satisfying, even though I was saying the episode's anticlimactic. It did have that for me at least.
When Renee gives his speech, I think for a minute I was like, oh, they are going to stay there, and he's like, and it's going to be kind of like whatever the consequences are. His weakness will end up kind of getting her caught up in it. And then I was like, oh, that'd be kind of a harsh and interesting ending. I kind of wish they had done the harsher ending than the happy ending. But good for her character.
I do think the idea of, oh, how is there a dead guy in this escape pod and he's been a corpse in orbit for 22 years? I was just hanging out with this guy earlier today. That is a great idea. I love that idea. It deserves a better episode. That concept deserves a good Star Trek episode.
Yeah, it could be a really cool scene. I'm looking to see if I have any other notes on this. I have a general thing about their flashlights and stuff in this because it shows up in several more episodes in this
just like
this batch.
How kind of like real
low tech it is.
They are. Yeah, that's nice.
It's kind of it's maybe a little bit more of a criticism. I do appreciate that. It kind of it's a thing that always works for creating tension. Is little beams of light stabbing out through a hallway while they have guns drawn or whatever. But it's also like I feel like they should have some kind of just little drone or something that can light up a whole room. They just. It seems a little silly. It's I guess this is kind of in the same realm though as seat belts on the ship. The bridge. I'm like, well, we want the mobility and the drama of them moving around, and it's cooler when they go around through hallways with flashlights. But I'm like, man, there would be easy ways to light a lot of this stuff up. It just made me laugh.
I liked Travis when he's like, if that traitor left so quick, why is the door shut? Why would he stop and shut the hatch behind him? I was like, I like that. I was like, oh, that is a good point. I like Travis when he's like, oh, this is the experienced spacefaring guy.
Yeah.
We always talk about how they should give him more stuff like that.
he does get some moments like that here and there in some of these ones, but maybe not enough. Um,
one more complaint. I found something else to complain about.
sure.
When he says that their Kentari's ship was shot down by raiders and they've been stranded on that planet, it's like, why just say like raiders? Why not, like, we know that Klingons are raiding, like why not like tie it into the universe and say they were Klingons? Or
Nausicaans.
there's Nausicaans. We've established 2 different like silent aliens that run around attacking people, so like why not make it any of them? Or, you know, if you actually gave Rick and Brandon their year off to develop the show, work with a staff and create more of a show bible and do all of that stuff, like maybe they could have like had all that stuff connected and it would have been like the same like marauding. They would have landed on like, okay, it's either gonna be like the Nausicaans or Klingons or whoever, but whenever we need like a, you know, fill in the blank, some marauders shot down a ship, it's like, oh, we can use these people and it'll all feel like part of one big cohesive universe. But instead it's like, oh, it was some raiders. So that's kind
They
of
wanted it to be as generic as possible.
Yeah, pretty much.
One other thing too is that there's a bit where T'Pol is like, "I heard something," and Trip is like, "Must be your imagination" or whatever. That is a trope that already it was long needing to be retired. Then, and it reminded me of. This was pointed out, I think, on like Women at Warp on the episode. What's the episode whose name I never remember? Where Beverly's like, if there's nothing wrong with me, there must be something wrong with the universe. What's that episode?
Remember Me?
Is that what it is? You know, the one where the ship crew keeps shrinking until it's just her and Jean-Luc, and she has to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's Remember Me.
Okay, and she, when she comes to him with that, he immediately takes her at face value that this is happening and starts to try and investigate it. And, I do realize that this, I guess, shows that they're still working through that with T'Pol and Trip. They are not at that level of trust yet.
Yeah.
Picard has built that up. But I'm still like, come on, man. If nothing else, she's got the ears for it, okay?
Perhaps they too will will parent a child together, like Jean-Luc and Bev.
Maybe so. I did notice, she seemed a little bit more like, hey, try not to screw everything that moves Trip around him, a little...
Yeah, she was jealous. Like, oh, is this going to be like the Zerillian lady that, last time you were this taken with an engineer, you wound up carrying her child. Yeah, I like the sassy jealousness there.
And it's a little foreshadowing.
It's trashy, but yeah, I like
it. It is kind of trashy. All right, let's move past this boring episode, though.
All right, so let's move on to some good old racial profiling in Detained. Teleplay by Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong. Story by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga. Directed by David Livingston. Archer and Mayweather accidentally enter a militarized zone and are detained by an alien race called Tendarans, who are at war with the Suliban. Both men find themselves sharing cells with some Suliban detainees who they believe are wrongly imprisoned. So, Dave, this episode, to put it in context, came out early 2002, shortly after the events of 9/11, when there's like a lot of concern in the country, a lot of security concerns, and a lot of strange parallels with the Japanese internment of World War II, and a lot of concerns in the Arab American and Muslim American community, and it was actually like a very relevant and topical episode at the time, and I have a lot of respect for it. As far as like execution wise, I think it's okay. I think it's good, but not great. It's like I like it but love it in terms of like quality, but there's a lot I respect in it, and I think it could have been better. It could have maybe been like more meaningful, but there's some good scenes, some good dialogue, and I like seeing Dean Stockwell. If people watched Quantum Leap, he was on screen with Scott Bakula in every episode, and now they get to have some screen time together. So that's kind of cool. But what do you think about it?
Father, we talked about Stockwell off mic a few days ago. And I did not watch Quantum Leap, and
It is a blind spot for you.
it's a blind spot. So I saw him, and I was like, "Oh, I know that actor. I like him." And I quick looked him up, and I was like, "Oh, Dean Stockwell. Yeah, that's right. I've seen him in some other odds and ends." But I didn't even notice that he's like best known for. I wasn't really looking at his credits. I didn't look at that he was best known for Quantum Leap, probably. So I watched this whole one, not knowing that there was any connection at all between those actors. And for me, I'm kind of glad. I think it might have felt gimmicky, although there wasn't really much gimmicky about their interactions or anything.
Yeah,
A few
that's a TV tradition, like Shatner is on T.J. Hooker, and then they have like Nimoy come guest star in an episode, or like
sure.
John Schneider, right? From Dukes of Hazzard.
From Dukes of Hazzard,
he was
yeah.
Jonathan Kent in Smallville, and then they had what's his name who played Bo show up.
The other guy, the dark-haired guy.
Something. But yeah, it's kind of a tradition in television.
So, Fatheree, I looked up while I was after I watched this. I was trying to remember when the big controversies came out about like Guantanamo Bay and especially Abu Ghraib, the prison in Iraq, where there were like these really terrible things going on. There were deaths and there was torture. I mean, torture was actually normal, but it was like particularly horrific and very like. Basically, I was like, is this episode responding to that? But that was really around 2004. And so this would be more about like general detention, I think, and the air of anxiety. And it definitely was like, as a thematic, was like, hey, not all not all Muslims are part of the Taliban would be, what this thematic would be. I noticed that it also only definitively referenced the detainment of Japanese Americans during World War II. Which I kind of get. You're not going to want to necessarily talk about the present overtly because you're literally living in the times. You don't know how things are going to play out. You kind of want to get a little distance before you say, oh, it's just like after 9/11, But I did feel like the episode had some teeth, and I liked that about it. I also like prison break stories.
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun at the end. There's something exciting about like a prison break thing,
Yeah, and like a righteous prison break.
Yeah.
These guys are people we've gotten to know over the course of it. I thought the guy who played is it Danik? Is that the sort of lead guy?
Yeah, he's the guy who was the director of engineering at some institute, and he separated from his wife. There's so many things that like happen with these people that are detained by the state, and it's like, no, like I'm not like some like weird dude from another country. I lived here. Like my brother was best friends with this guy who just like threw me in solitary confinement. My grandfather settled here hundreds of years ago. So I like this is the first time they explained the Suliban don't have a home world. They're all refugees, and I think that was that was cool original. And like, oh, you're bad guys. It's not like a race of people. Your bad guys are like the cabal, the terrorist cell, and then the rest of the Suliban are like just normal everyday citizens trying to make their way. And that was something that I think Star Trek kind of hadn't really like explored before. Normally they just kind of like refer to like the Klingons are the bad guys or the Cardassians are the bad guys, and there's a few times here or there where it'd be like, oh, but like these civilians over here are okay. Here's some good ones over here, but this is the first time where it's like, oh no, the majority of these people are cool. It's just like a few assholes over here, and look how important it is not to conflate all of them.
Well, I feel like we'd gotten some of that with, like, Cardassians and in Deep Space Nine. They certainly got into some nuance. But this was, a particular kind of thing.
It was never treated like... They were always treated as, like, they're the outlier,
Oh, I see what you're saying, where it's like the majority of Suliban are probably, not into this. Yeah, for sure. That's why I think the episode felt like it had some teeth. And, I also thought that, is it Colonel Grat?
Dean Stockwell's a good bad guy.
He's a good bad guy. When he starts dropping how much intel he's gathered on Archer, and basically he name checks every episode where they had some Suliban thing.
He's been taking notes also.
It's almost like he does a little Columbo thing. He's like, oh, by the way, he's like, I just wanted to ask you, what were they doing? I saw they landed in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. Oklahoma? And he's like, well, what's that about? Why were they on Earth?
Because Colonel Grad is a good actor too, like Dean Stockwell. But he's so believable in that, like, this guy is smart, and this guy is totally convinced of what he is doing and his righteous cause, and he is super dangerous because of that. He's like, like, this guy is a true believer. Like, when he says, these people don't have any rights. Their rights were suspended immediately the moment the Cabal attacked us. It's like, he really believes that. In his heart, he believes that is true. It's like, man, like, how do you go up against someone like that? It's really
Space Rumsfeld. Yeah, he was a scary dude, and it was why it felt good to see them break out at the end and get, justice that we don't always get to see in the real world. I did think that, for a show that's pretty good about its continuity and is frequently referencing its own stories, I was like, man, this feels like it would really cause a galactic incident or, like an international incident equivalent. They were like, they attacked the prison in a shuttle, Trip blew up stuff like he was a badass. That would not go forgotten. And I don't know if it comes back. Well, I guess we do know that there is there's fallout that I really like, where it starts to build a reputation for Archer. I just don't know if Grat or anything. I'm trying to think. He doesn't. I'm trying to.
I'm gonna cut you off, Dave, because I think I know where you're going. But just to
keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
That's fine. I'm just speculating anyway.
The Tendarans are only in these 2 episodes that we discussed with them tonight. So much to my disappointment, I think Colonel Grat should have come back. I think that he should have become the main villain of the show. I think that the show should have moved to, like, oh, actually, the Suliban aren't the worst thing in the universe. Our response to them was actually much worse, and this guy is out of control. And that would have been the perfect story to be telling at the time in the early aughts. But that's not the direction that the show chose to go. But I really see the road not taken when I rewatch Detained.
Sure. All right, it's time to move on. It's time to get slimy.
The great Vox Sola episode, one of the many Latin titled ones, but teleplay by Fred Decker, story by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga and Fred Decker, directed by B'Elanna Torres herself, Roxanne Dawson. A symbiotic alien comes aboard Enterprise and captures several of the starship's officers in its web. Hoshi struggles to communicate with the alien invader in an attempt to save the trapped officers. So, there's, I don't know, just a lot of scenes of people, like, covered in slime, but that's the main thing I remember in this episode. But there's kind of a lot going on. You have, like, Travis doing diplomacy with the Cretessans. You have Hoshi doing translator stuff. You have T'Pol and Hoshi not getting along. You have Reed, I guess, invents force fields. There's actually, like, a bunch of things happening, yet it feels really boring to me when I watch it. What do you think about it?
I think it's, for me at least, probably the worst episode of the season. It had, like, I think I agree with you. There's, like, the makings of a better episode in this, and a smarter episode.
Like the makings of, like, 10 different episodes.
Right. They might have gotten a little. That may be even one of the problems. That they had to kind of go through like translation stuff that involved deep mathematics. That's a cool idea, but the watching T'Pol and Hoshi work together was not particularly satisfying. And I even thought that, like, it was almost like a weird retrograde thing for T'Pol to be that kind of harsh when we'd seen her reach out to her in previous episodes, and I don't know.
Like in Sleeping Dogs.
Right, and so that felt like they had kind of forgotten some of the character work they were building up. And yeah, just like the incidental writing wasn't great. Maybe all the budget was, like, spent on, like, different squelching noises for just the endless scenes of them kind of writhing inside tentacles.
The original title of this episode was going to be "The Needs of the One," which was such a great title for. Would have been the best part of the episode.
Is that supposed to be because the creature is like a kind of a hive mind?
Yeah, but I mean, it's because like in Star Trek we say like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know. I think that was a better name than Vox Sola, but what do I know?
What does that mean? One voice, I assume, something like that. Gotta be.
Yeah, I think so. It's like a solo of a single voice.
Why waste a good title on a bad episode? You know, the movie they mention in it when it's movie night, Wages of Fear. We also talked about this off mic briefly. Is a really good French movie from the 50s. If nothing else, I guess the episode deserves some credit for potentially pointing people to something much better than it.
Yeah, I should watch that movie at some point. So any movies that they watch on Enterprise, I'll toss on in the Tex-Trek Discord sometime. So I don't know when I'll get around to it, but I'll put that on in there sometime. So anyone watching or listening to this, you should have a link in the description. You can click that now and join our Discord, and then go to the Welcome Aboard channel and say hi. I'm in the Discord. I heard this in Tex-Trek 272, and so now I'm here in the Discord. Let's chat. So someone messaged me the other day and told me I was driving and I stopped driving to message you because I wanted to tell you I was listening to Tex-Trek and I wanted to let you know, Fatheree, that you and Dave are disagreeing and I agree with Dave right here and disagree with you. And instead
was that like a weird thing? Like for the first time ever, I agree with Dave and I had to message you.
I don't know what the genesis of it was, but and instead of doing that, we can just have these conversations in the Discord. So I encourage
come visit us.
To come visit over there. But yeah, we'll watch Wages of Fear, and also what else have they? For whom the bell tolls. So,
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, so.
Father, there was a bit in this early on when the thing got like the captain and like pulled him in, and like they're talking about their plan afterwards. That's when it cuts to them talking about what they're gonna do, and I'm like, there seem like there's some basic things that they should have been discussing. Like, did it clearly hurt or kill anyone? What's the chain of command now that Archer's in there? What's it like? I felt like there were basic questions they weren't asking, which was just very weird to me.
Well, I don't know. Like the chain of command is pretty clear, right? If
Right, but I'm just like, well, like it's a big thing if like the captain is potentially dead in there. Like they weren't even saying like, is it hurting them? Like they get around to that, but it's not like the first thing they're asking, that seemed bizarre to me. I would assume that, I would not assume it's going to take them and squish it into itself, which is what it was doing. I don't know. Like, I felt like a scene was missing. It's just weird.
A few of the things that I actually found that I liked in this episode, because I was surprised at how many things I found that I liked, even though like I don't really like the episode. But I do like that Travis gets to do like the diplomacy stuff with the Crotessans, and I think the Crotessans are weird. It's like, to them, like, eating is, like, as private as mating. But, okay, Brandon Braga likes, like, the weird sci-fi ideas. But it was cool to see Vaughn Armstrong as yet another character as the Crotessan. So we get to see Admiral Forrest. And we saw him in Klingon form last week. And this week we see him in Crotessan form. And then he shows up again in Season 2. They offend him again when Porthos pees on one of their sacred trees.
Some people are just good at being offended.
I kind of like that people in the 22nd century still like drink beer and eat pretzels and watch sports, even though it's weird that I guess the University of Texas has a good water polo team in 2252. But
that threw me. That's Archer's thing.
Sport. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very like 20th century American when it comes to athletics, so I know about basketball, American football, baseball, and like that's even like golf and tennis are a bit exotic for me. But water polo, that's the sport of the future. The tentacles chasing Reed, that's kind of a fun moment when I just like Dominic Keating's like expression when he's like running from the tentacles. But
You know,
the communication, like treating a communication with like a strange new life form, and like Hoshi having to do like some weird unconventional stuff as the communication officer, like that was really good. Like on paper, it was like kind of like an annoying screeching sound when you watch the episode, and it again, I think this one also feels like a bit anticlimactic. Like, oh, she just like made like a little walkie-talkie machine that can like beep at the thing and it tells them where to go and they just take it home. Not a ton happens. I was telling you the other day, Dave, when we were discussing this privately, but I think this would have worked better as like the animated series. It's one of those examples where I think, if this episode, it has a kernel of a good idea, but it's just like all this bloated junk around it. If we could just like cut this down to a 25-minute story, I think it would be much more entertaining.
Yeah, I agree. You really tighten it up. Though, Father, something else that I liked in this episode was Phlox. Like, under no circumstances was he going to let Malcolm, poke and prod and torture the tentacle. He's like, no, this is a piece of life too. It's its own individual expression of that creature, and he's like, forget about it. And that was a cool moment for him.
The autopsy scene was cool.
Let's see, what did they do during the autopsy scene?
It was just Phlox studying the tentacle, but he's in the environmental suit. He had to put on a space suit to work on it. So I like that. So far of the 8 episodes, we've covered 4. And
by the way, Father, one final thing about this. I want to say that I continue to notice the music in several of these episodes, and this one, during some of these dramatic scenes, I think with the interacting with the thing, there was this really nice violin solos that were working in there, and I was just like, oh man, that's really above average for for modern Trek stuff. I'm continuing to enjoy that. What's that?
For modern Trek?
Yeah, and by modern Trek I mean anything that's not TOS, which had like really badass music.
But for Berman era Trek, I think.
Yeah, infamously kind of a little down tempo, soft, forgettable.
I like the early TNG stuff, and then it gets real bad real fast.
Yeah, early TNG was still in trying to be a little bit like TOS. But so we're crossing our halfway threshold, Father.
So of the 4 that we've talked about, Acquisition, Oasis, Detained, and Voxola, the only one of those like I really like, I guess, is Detained, and even that, it's like I kind of like it more for like it's just concepts and stuff, and not so much like the quality of the execution.
Yeah.
But
a little bit of a rough patch.
There's things I can find to enjoy in, Acquisition. I have a lot of fun. I always want to call it Acquisitions, by the way, plural. I was like that on Deep Space Nine with Indiscretion, the Kira Dukat in the Desert episode. I always wanted to call it Indiscretions, plural. But
yeah,
I love seeing those Ferengi, so I have a good time rewatching that. In Oasis, this is the first time I think I've watched this episode since not just Anne Wershing, but also Renee Abarjan was the first time I've watched it since either one of them has passed. So, I'll still be able to enjoy their performances. I've always thought they were both really good at it. And I like Detained, but Voxola, like, there really isn't... even though there's moments in here I like, it's hard for me to ever get like excited about rewatching it. It's just like there's nothing in it I really look for. I guess just the water polo. I guess like I don't know. They have like some cool water polo footage on TV, and they're wearing different shirts. It's a little bit visually interesting, but I don't know. Yeah, there's not. It's a hard one to sit through.
Yeah, like I said, probably my least favorite of the season. So. That said, the next one was one I liked quite a bit. So let's maybe talk about that, unless you've got anything else to go on this one.
No, let's move to Fallen Hero, teleplay by Alan Cross, story by Rick Berman, Brandon Braga, and Chris Black, directed by Patrick Norris. Archer is ordered to transport Vulcan Ambassador Valar from the planet Mazar. That's so hard to say. Valar from Mazar. That's kind of how Forrest says it. He's like, her name is Valar. She's on a planet called Mazar. It's like, are you going to start, like, rapping for us, Forrest?
Beastie Boys style.
Yeah.
Planet called Mazar.
Archer is ordered to transport Vulcan Ambassador Valar from the planet Mazar, where she has been accused of criminal misconduct. Following an attack on Enterprise, Nepal defends the ambassador and asks Archer for help. So you were saying that you like this one quite a bit more, Dave.
Yeah, I think it's like a pretty high tier suspense episode, and there's some very good character work for T'Pol. We get a Vulcan in Valar, who's a real counterpoint to a lot of the Vulcans we've been seeing.
She's the most likable Vulcan on the show, like including T'Pol. She's. I guess I like some of those the weirdo hippie Vulcans.
Well, yeah,
a couple of them were all right, but out of conventional Vulcans, she's the only likable one we've seen.
Well, what was funny is because of the what was it, Vatosh Katur?
Yeah.
Vulcans. I was definitely ready to believe there was something bad about this lady because she seemed so chill, right, and happy to interact with humans and even shake hands. So I was pretty pleased that she was what she looked like. That was pretty cool, actually. And then I think the episode goes from suspense to like a really good chase sequence where you see them really pulling out all the stops, fighting for like every square kilometer that they stay ahead of the bad guys and stuff. I was a little. I feel like there's a little maybe plot sketchiness in the sense that these are basically the space mob of Mazar trying to like take out a witness, and like taking them out on like the main ship from Starfleet doesn't seem like good policy.
Yeah,
so
Earth is a Starfleet is just
still
like
nothing.
Earth. Yeah, it's an Earth, or it's Earth's NASA. It's like no one cares. They don't respect Earth NASA. Like who's even heard of Earth? Some weird.
I mean, the Vulcans are there guiding them. That means that they, probably, if I were some of the other races out there that don't like the Vulcans, I'd be like, we need to keep a watch on Earth because they're going to become Vulcan too if we're not careful about it.
I always picture like the Vulcans. They're kind of like the British in the 19th century. They're just like they're operating like in all corners of the quadrant. They're just kind of like ever present. And
yeah, no, that's probably the case. But really, that's kind of my only criticism. I don't know if this episode is overall well liked, but I feel like its suspense and kind of chase sequence have to be acknowledged if nothing else.
For me, it's a very meh episode.
Really?
Unfortunately, like I don't have like a ton that I enjoy in this batch of Enterprise. But there is some more stuff I like that we'll get to in a moment. But I like Valar. I always look forward to seeing her. But the suspense never really works for me on rewatch. Maybe it did the first time I saw this. But it is fun to see them, kind of hot rodding the Warp 5 engine and you taking it like all the way up to. It's kind of funny too. It's like, man, like going Warp 5 is gonna make you fly apart, and then you watch, the original series where they're zipping around at Warp 8, and it really makes them feel more primitive in Enterprise.
Yeah. Although what's funny is they still depict it kind of the same way.
Right.
If Kirk ever had to push it, everything starts to shake and there's some pops and fires and stuff. So it's it's still the same visual adaptation of it.
I think they really sell their trick at the end when they stage the murder of the Vulcan.
Yeah.
And
that's another
when
Kirk
Phlox
type move.
is like, no, and he's when he's screaming.
Yeah, that was very intense. I almost felt scared when he did that. I was like, what happened?
Give Dr. Phlox the Oscar.
I actually do think that scene lost a little bit of the momentum because when they got on the ship, they still should have been threatening, even though Archer had a plan. It still should have been like, man, this may not come off. Who knows? They might start shooting us. Who knows? And so, I felt like it gets a little bit flat there. But that was a cool scene. And the Vulcans rolling up in their big-ass ship was a cool scene. I really liked the episode.
When they come at the end and they drive the Mazarites away, I like that. But I don't like the Mazarites. I think they're a lame, forgettable villain. It's like, okay, if you're gonna create like a new Star Trek race, then make them memorable. If they're not gonna do anything memorable, then why not just use some? Why couldn't these have been Bolians or Tellarites or Binar or like anyone that I might have been more invested in than like these weirdos with like a weak design that I will never see again and never miss.
Well, and to some degree, I get why they, might have done it in this episode, because they wanted it to be a done in one story, and not have this thing where it's like, where we're always wondering, oh, what's going on with the Bolians? Why do they have this criminal syndicate on there? What's the bigger picture story? They just wanted to have a planet with a mob that wanted to kill a Vulcan ambassador, and so I think that it works. Could they have been more, unique? For sure, more visually unique. But I kind of liked this guy. I actually wish they had made him feel a little bit more like a mobster, but he kind of felt in control and a little bit hard to, not a little bit tougher to trick. I just like that they kept on basically matching Enterprise. And there was a question. I thought it was a nice little knife's edge of like, oh, well, we think we can outrun them. Shit, it's not, it looks like they can match us, actually. Could we get just 10 more minutes closer? That suspense was all cool to me.
Yeah. No, I like that stuff. I guess the drama in the episode that comes from just people not wanting to talk to each other, it feels very weak. They never say what the criminal charges are, right? It's just like, it was criminal misconduct, but it was like, it's false charges, but they never get into what they were, but it makes it hard to get invested when the character is like, oh, well, there's these criminal charges, but I'm not going to tell you about them.
Well, yeah, it seemed weird that what could it have been that she's so dodgy about it, but of course the point is that she's asking for trust, and there's a question of whether Archer and his people have earned that yet, and I like T'Pol going to bat for them, and I like T'Pol going to bat for her. That was all stuff that I was very down with. In fact, I loved when T'Pol said, if we expect to continue our relations with humanity, we have to earn their trust. That's a big character moment for me.
I liked her being the one to convince Valar to trust the humans instead of, I guess, Valar being more... Because Valar does seem to appreciate humans more than T'Pol. She seems more, open to them and more tolerant of the, I guess, whatever, human traits that T'Pol finds insufferable. Valar doesn't seem to have as big of an issue with. But then it's interesting to me when T'Pol is actually the one who's, kind of understands us humans more and is like, oh, they're actually a bit more trustworthy than we've been giving them credit for.
Yeah, Valar may have been well, I can put on a friendly act with them, but to some degree, I'm really not there internally. And T'Pol externally isn't, but internally is.
I still find the Mazarites incredibly boring, and I don't know. Couldn't it have been the Orions that had infiltrated them, or just I feel like they could have jazzed that stuff. You know what it is, Dave? It's that Rick and Brandon still have that Voyager mindset of oh, we don't have to have established races. We'll just have these planets that we just come across one time, and then Voyager leaves that system and we never run into them again. So they had kind of gotten in the habit of just having these boring people that we just see one time and then never use again. So I think it's just been kind of the style they were used to writing. And
so Jill says it makes the world seem small if they keep reusing species, and I'm a little torn on this one. I think that if you establish kind of cool, iconic things, or if there's an alien race...
It depends on the circumstances.
If there's an alien race that catches on, I think it's worth leaning into them and giving us some more lore and more episodes. Honestly, it's crazy that it took till now for the Andorians, who appeared in TOS, to really get some work done.
That was fucking criminal that Rick Berman made us wait all those years to see Andorians again.
And, honestly, I also find that when they do one-offs like this and then never do any follow-up with them, Fatheree, I'm always talking about wanting a bit of follow-up, just, some story that shows how things come out for people.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a boring species, but it's
But, it can feel well, the effects guys just figured out what different bumps and ridges to do this week, and... yeah, that's a little boring and makes them feel a little just forgettable. So I'm a little bit torn, but I lean towards. I think I would have liked to have seen it be one of Nausicaans or something.
I mean, I think Trek has enough diversity. It's oh yeah, we we have a bunch of races we can reuse, and it's not gonna feel like we're just reusing the same 4 or 5. I think there's dozens of races we know of that exist within warp 5 distance of Earth that they could have used here. Like anyone who is in season 1 of TNG, pretty much, or in TOS, where First Contact is not established. Anyone who is at the Journey to Babel. There's plenty of races that like we just see them as like a background character. Anyone from the motion picture, any like those TMP races, anyone in Star Trek 4 and the Federation Council, like there's a lot to that I think we kind of need to see like explored and fleshed
I will
out.
say, like, no one can say that Trek is always constantly reusing anybody. It's like, even the biggest ones, Klingons and Vulcans and stuff, they're not omnipresent. There's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of aliens that aren't them. And even though Orion pirates are a cliche, we see lots and lots and lots of pirates that aren't Orions. So yeah. I don't think we're going to convince Jill, and I think maybe Aaron is in the same boat. As tonight, and they're probably not going to convince us, though. Fatheree, do you have anything else to say about the episode?
I guess this is the first time they mention Risa, because that was another. So they're like, okay, we're desperate for ratings. We really need people to stop giving up on Enterprise. Ratings continue to go down and down and down. Okay, we brought back Ethan Phillips. We brought back Renee Auberjonois. Let's go to Risa. We can do like a fun Risa episode. People will like that, right? So let's spend multiple weeks in the show advertising our upcoming Risa episode. We're going to announce that we're going to Risa, and then we'll get sidetracked a couple of times, and eventually we'll get there.
I loved that. I thought that
like
was fun.
Too. I like the that it takes them a while to get there. So
I liked that. Now, when the episode finally came along, it was a disappointment, but we'll get to that. But I like the build up to it, and I like the sort of bluntness of T'Pol, and it was blunt and funny, of course. When she's like, "You guys," she's like, "You guys are a little bit. You're like operating 3% below standards. You need to get laid." It's that was fun, and
it also checked another box of allowing them to like, let's try to pump up the sex in Enterprise. We're gonna make this the most sex Star Trek people have ever seen ever. That was a big incentive going into the show.
They could have had a lot more sexiness in the Risa episode. It was practically chaste, I felt. But
yeah,
we'll get to it.
Yeah, we have a couple of other ones to get to before Risa, but first up is Desert Crossing, teleplay by Andre Bermanis, our Berman-era science consultant. Story by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga and Andre Bermanis. Directed by David Straighton. Archer and Tucker are invited to a desert-like planet by an alien leader after they help fix his ship. After arriving, they discover he has invited them under false pretenses. Another disappointment is like, man, like this prequel show, like I want to see Archer meet all these. I want to see Tellarites. Can we please have Tellarites? Like, no, there's gonna be boring people who look like humans, but they live in the desert.
You got to take the episodes as they are, Father, not as what they might be.
Well, that was part of my frustration, watching early Enterprise in 2002. But I do like Clancy Brown, so I'm glad that he was in Star Trek. But it's kind of shocking that the franchise didn't get more out of him. He just does this character in this episode, or he's like, I don't know, he's kind of like a cartoony Bin Laden stereotype of a. It's like around this time, like South Park did an episode of where they had like Cartman chasing Osama bin Laden, like Bugs. It was like a Bugs Bunny Elmer Fudd cartoon, but it was like with Cartman and Bin Laden, and this kind of felt like that cartoon idea of a terrorist in 2002.
I actually feel like he's more like probably calling on a little bit of Lawrence of Arabia, a little bit of our sort of the mythologized Arabic prince kind of thing. He seemed Americans didn't think of Bin Laden as charming and charismatic. This guy was a gregarious host. He was almost, almost had like a little bit of like a stereotype of like a bit of
Yeah.
Russian to him as well, even.
And he's like Clancy Brown is just like talking and like it's like Clancy Brown, just give us like a terrorist accent.
I don't think...
I will be Zabra, the terrorist who talks to Archer like this.
But Father, I don't think it's meant to be a terrorist vibe. I think he is. It's more like the exoticism that they do. It's it's still not necessarily a good thing, but it's when those movies that kind of where you would have like white actors playing Sinbad or something like that,
Yeah.
and other Middle Eastern princes, and they kind of were like. They would romanticize it and exoticize it, and so that like they were meant to be. I think he's meant to be a likable and an honorable character, in
he's
his
meant
way.
to be ambiguous. Like
Yes,
and that's not my like analysis. That's like the writers of the episode have talked. Like Andre Bermanis has talked about like,
at the end
the
of the
beauty
episode
of Zabra is that like he's like you don't know how good of a good guy or bad guy he really is.
But he saves him in the end. He helps him out, although it takes a little arm twisting.
There's stuff I like in this episode, but overall, I find it has more problems than things I like, and it's another anticlimactic ending that kind of, I don't know, it's another one I never look forward to rewatching. I get kind of bored of watching Trip fall around in the desert because he's dehydrated from playing volleyball in the sand. But how do you feel about it?
I like this episode. Not love, but I liked it quite a bit. Other than the fact that it might have made more sense to have some actual like Arabic actors or somebody with darker skin for the kind of climate they're
or
in.
I would have not done
Actually,
desert. I wouldn't have done desert people and terrorism in the same episode. I think that's
it's a little obnoxious, but you know what? But I feel like they're portrayed sympathetically. That when he tells his story, which if we take it at fairly face value, it does sound like they are an oppressed caste. They have a caste system, and they're on the low rung. Also, by the way, it does occur to me, I think they're not supposed to be originally from the desert. They just had to hide out there, so they wouldn't necessarily have dark skin. So that's actually fair, I think. But I thought that the episode did a kind of a neat job of summing up the themes of humanity's stumbling first steps into the galaxy when Hoshi is talking about it, and she sums it up as, we get invited to dinner, and before you know it, we're accused of taking sides in a war. Like, to me, it's pointing them that they need prime directives, they need some kind of protocols, they need to actually maybe listen to the Vulcans a little bit. I liked Tom Clancy's a lot. I was kind of amused, at least, by the Top Gun volleyball scene in the.
What sport actually has like a scoop like that?
Is it highlight? Is that how you say it?
I don't know. It's
I think that's what it is.
It's not one of the ones that I'm familiar with.
Is it also? I don't actually know how rugby works. Does rugby have some kind of thing?
No, rugby. You just have like a football looking ball. Like it looks like an American football ball.
I think there's a scoop in highlight.
Okay.
This is a I'll say this. These lacrosse was mentioned by Joel. I think there you go.
Okay, yeah.
But it's it's space lacrosse or space terrorist lacrosse. These guys are in pretty good shape. It was an opportunity, just like Top Gun, to show some beefcake and. Although, man, they did it right after they apparently had this big meal. I felt for them there. I was like, you guys are gonna throw up.
Well, it does explain, like, it does make sense why Trip was so sick, but I don't know, like, to me, I prefer, like, if Trip had, like, if he got injured during the attack, if he had, like, something, like, stabbed his leg or something, like, I don't know, he just seems kind of lame to just be, like, just dehydrated,
that's hardcore, Fatheree. You're like, how dare...
No, it just seems low stakes and pedestrian.
I believe, to me, they played it kind of so realistically where he, like, really looked broken and worn, and maybe a little quicker than, we want in our action heroes, but, like, I felt it was very believable. Like that, you've got a fever, you're nauseous, you don't want to drink even, it was actually almost a little uncomfortable to me to watch because it felt so kind of real. I don't know if you've ever had, like, I've never had, like, heat stroke, but I feel like I've been, like, right on the cusp of it to the point where I was about to throw up, and it sucks. It's terrible. And I felt like they kind of captured that.
Yeah, to me it makes me think of like when I worked in the aluminum smelter, and sometimes people would fall out, and
Yeah, yeah, I bet. I
uh,
can't even imagine.
but I actually like just someone who like hates like the hot weather. I took it pretty well at when I had to work in a 350-degree environment, but
Fatheree, they what was I going to say? You know how I've liked, and this, it's a big thing. I realize now at this point it's not the exception, it's the rule, that they are constantly referencing past episodes, and that's like a compliment I have in general for the whole first season, is that they build on each other. And I thought that this was a great like one of my favorite other episodes is the prison break episode. I really liked that in the first season. And this is that getting mythologized. So Clancy Brown
Clancy Brown.
is like, oh yeah, I heard you rescued 1,000 people and killed all these guards. I like that reputation is getting around there, and they're getting to the complicated point where, oh, this is getting beyond us, and that was another sort of win for me to call that back and have it.
That felt real, like how stories get exaggerated. How game of telephone. Like you rescue 89 Suliban, and then a month later people are going around saying you rescued 1,000.
And you can tell that Archer does want to help, which is why I think
I do like that
we're meant to sympathize more than not with Clancy Brown.
But I like the idea of being like, but sometimes it can be kind of tricky choosing sides, and it doesn't like end the conversation there, though. It doesn't just be like, well, it's complicated, who knows who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. I like that it still has like a little bit more of a sympathetic lens towards Zerbal, which I thought was like kind of bold to do at the time in 2002, and I feel like season 1 of Enterprise kind of questioned the status quo more than like seasons 2 or 3 will, which is
and more than I expected it to.
It's a disappointment that I experience rewatching the show, because I see a lot of potential in season 1 that the show doesn't really get into, and then I have to wait till season 4 before my favorite parts of Enterprise. But I do enjoy seeing Clancy Brown, and I gotta admit, like, if I rescued his spaceship and he invited me to come hang out with him at his little desert village, I'd be tempted to take him up on it. And he kind of seems like a fun dude to hang out with for a day. But yeah,
get some wall hangings.
I don't know if I'd want to. If I'd want to like dedicate my my ship to fighting his cause.
Well, Trip addresses that, and he's like, "Hey, there's a difference between helping out some." Prisoners that were like unfairly imprisoned and fighting a war.
Yeah.
He's like that. This is beyond us.
But I'm definitely sympathetic to the his story about like, oh, there is a caste system, and even though that's been overturned, we still don't get fair treatment. It's like, okay, that all sounds pretty believable, but I kind of, in some ways, Zerbal's a bit more of like what I thought Shran should be a bit more like. How it bothers me when Shran's like, I just couldn't sleep at night knowing that I owed you a favor. I kind of wanted Shran to be a bit savvier, and I kind of picture Shran as like, he'd be like the Andorian commando. He'd be like, no, of course Archer like turned that stuff over to me because it was the right thing to do. I don't owe him a favor. Like, this clearly shows that Earth, this new player on the intergalactic stage, these humans, they clearly see the righteous Andorians against the evil Vulcans, and yeah, I don't owe this guy a favor. He was just like doing the right thing. Of course, I kind of feel like Shran would have had like that level of savviness, and I think Berman and Braga just like they didn't have time. They couldn't like put that much thought into a lot of stuff. They're like, oh, we just need this guy here. Just like, oh, he just couldn't sleep at night. He owes Archer a favor. That's good enough. Let's go with that. But there's some stuff in Zorbal that I would have liked to see done with Shran. I guess I have a lot of problems with him being like this. I don't know, like this dude in the desert. And I feel like if you had cast like a Middle Eastern actor, it would have been like even worse. It would have made that conflation even worse. I think they should have.
But Father, if they were bucking the trend, they were saying that like these desert dwelling guys deserve some sympathy.
I've never talked about this episode with well, I don't want to say it. I've heard many people voice that complaint, and I have a hard time.
Disagreeing with
disputing
it?
Yeah.
We'll have to talk more about it off mic and further.
I don't want to say like I've never heard someone from one of those ethnicities that frequently get discriminated on against for I don't know association with Islamic terrorism or whatever we're going into. But I don't want to say like I've never heard one of those fans like tell me like they didn't have a problem with this episode, because I feel like if I say that, then someone in the comments will say it just to disprove me. But that's definitely like the sentiment that I have heard from those fans is like they really don't like this one.
I'll say this: I grew up with a lot of pulp traditions, and that means I'm not thrown too much when when they have like an exotic fill in the blank, someone who looks Asian or black or something like that. I'm used to that from pulp traditions, which are both weirdly rooted in racism, but also had that kind of thing where they exoticize them and they'd be like, oh, the Native Americans are to be admired. They're closer to the earth and they're more, humble than us. But they would do it in this kind of patriarchal, condescending way, but they would still elevate them a little bit. Very common pulp tradition. It's in Last of the Mohicans and tons of other projects. And I feel like Zabral is based in that, which is kind of like has a good heart behind it, sort of. But I absolutely can see that, that is, I'm looking at it from a privileged white guy perspective. And so I can see why he can be problematic. But, and I'm also just like, I like Clancy Brown. He is a kind of ridiculous character, but I'm there for it. I really like his character.
Yeah, I would have liked him to, like, not play someone who comes off as a racial stereotype.
Fair enough.
Offended a lot of people. But that's all I got on Desert Crossing. Let's move on to Risa. 2 days and 2 nights. Teleplay by Chris Black. Story by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga. Directed by Worf himself, Michael Dorn. This is the only Enterprise episode directed by Michael Dorn.
Fatheree, I believe it is possible that my 2 least favorite episodes were directed by Trek actors, really through no fault of their own. I think they had weak episodes, because the other one by Bolano was, what was her episode? Yeah, Voxola. Those are my 2 least favorite episodes of the season. Nothing to do with the directing, only the story. So, but go ahead. What's our premise here?
The crew take shore leave on the famous pleasure planet of Risa. For many, it is anything but a vacation. Yeah, I guess Hoshi has a good vacation. Travis breaks his leg. Archer gets roofied. Trip and Malcolm get mugged. So, doesn't work out well for most of them. But you said that you were definitely not a fan of this. I think that I guess there's some fun stuff in here. I don't know. It's kind of visually exciting to put on the screen. You get some cool locales. You get some different wardrobe for our characters. But yeah, there's a lot to complain about for sure. I like the slapstick comedy with Phlox, but I hate and I don't like to say the word hate often when we're talking about this. Like I only want to say hate when I really mean it. But I hate the Night at the Roxbury routine with Trip and Malcolm. It's some of the most embarrassing stuff Star Trek has ever done in what is it, 58 years of our franchise at this point?
Yeah, Aaron mentioned their no homo vibe, and man, there's just a lot of it's like a lot of their dialogue is just cliched, like, oh, look at that, isn't she hot? And then it seems like they have no actual game. All their lines are kind of cheeseball. I'm like, come on, man.
That's something of merit in this episode. I'll give it a compliment on that. That things don't work out well for them, and that things do work out well for Hoshi. I kind of like. Oh, this is a very I don't know, healthy flirtation with Hoshi and the guy that she encounters.
I wish it was all like that for all of the characters. Those were good scenes.
But yeah, not so much. But I like that it was like Trip and Reed were like they were being assholes and things don't work out well for them. But it's so like transphobic, the idea of like, oh, if you go out to the club, you better watch out because there's a lot of men pretending to be women and they're going to try to trick you, which it's kind of a harmful stereotype that's
very much
leads
so.
to a lot of hate crimes, but. It's also like very like untrue, and I don't know like the guys that are worried that I don't know there's some like I that someone's trying to like trick them or something like I don't.
Well, it's like it is its own also like fetish porn genre, which tells you that people like the idea of it because it's kind of trashy, and there's definitely a subsection of people who are into the idea, but in the same way that there's a lot of kinks and stuff that are kind of have some messed up ideas behind them, but it's in the end it's just kind of fantasy stuff. But yeah, like as presented here, it's very gross, which is a shame because you know what? Trip's leisure suit, his little white jacket, really good looking. I think he should have had a better time.
It is a rare instance of like decent civilian clothes in Berman era Star Trek. So it's like I guess they kind of fixed civilian clothes with Enterprise when they went like a little bit more real world, made it a bit closer to today's world. You didn't have the some of the Jake Sisko catastrophes, running around on screen. So
the Wrath of Khan kind of futurism in the collars and stuff.
There really was a lot they got right on Enterprise. It's like all of my complaints stem from the writing. But let's I guess like go through these like one by one though, like starting with Archer. His encounter with the Tendaran woman who's like a spy who's so cool. Like we don't really know her motivation. Is she a solo operator? Is she working with Dean Stockwell's character? Is she just someone who's a different part of that government, or like is she not affiliated with any agency? There's so much mystery, and then it doesn't go anywhere. We never see her again. They never follow it up. I think there's a lot of cool potential. I don't know. Maybe they didn't like the actor that they hired to play her. Maybe they didn't think she'd be like worth bringing back. But I don't know. What do you think of that stuff?
I thought that she was fine. She's she feels like she's got some good energy with Archer. And I kind of like the idea of the their dogs getting them talking initially.
That's a very real world thing.
Sure.
As a small dog person, but yeah, I mean, like you go to the dog parks, you talk to other dog owners, like a lot of anytime two dog people start like some romantic talking, like eventually at some point you got to be like, oh well, will our dogs get along? You gotta bridge that gap at some point.
Now, Fatheree, in real life, are a lot of them Tendaran spies?
I hate when that happens, but yeah, it's like 1 out of 3.
However, Joel is asking the question I wanted to know. How did the dog get to Archer's balcony?
She beamed it. She has a transporter probably because she's a spy. She did that to like get herself access to him.
It's a weird thing.
The intel. We know the Tendarans are thorough though. They know he's a dog. They know he's taking his dog on vacation.
They should have made that a plot point. They should have made that a plot point. It's weird to have it happen, and Archer is like, that's weird.
I actually like that because it stands out to you as weird, but then when you rewatch the episode, you can be like, oh, of course she would have a way to do that,
Somebody in the comments at DT says, little dogs will find a way.
I don't even know if that's like her actual pet. She might have engineered that in a lab to resemble an Earth canine and then made up the story about it being named Rilo. My dog here, Rilo, I adopted her when she was a puppy. That could have all been made up. I like how, she could have been the Garrick of Enterprise, There's so much mystery and intrigue there.
I watched this segment and I was kind of waiting for it to go somewhere because I felt like I said, I thought they had some good chemistry and then it goes nowhere and it's very disappointing.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun Suliban stuff in season 1 that I think they very, very clearly wanted to be a strong part of the show. It's almost like in Voyager, how so much of the early stuff was like with the Kazon and Seska and stuff.
Yeah.
But I like all of this so much more, and it's kind of sad that they do move away from it. But the stuff that they moved to in season 4, I very much love, so I can't complain too much. I'm sorry I keep saying that when we talk about Enterprise, but I'm going to say that a lot when we discuss seasons 2 and 3.
I hope I like it as much. Who knows?
But the Phlox stuff. Let's talk about Phlox next, I guess. I really like it's dumb slapstick, but I was just talking earlier how like I love Ferengi episodes. I'm okay with a little slapstick in Star Trek. It's fine. I laugh at Phlox when they're trying to wake him up and they're like Travis Mayweather. He's like, who? Our helmsman. Oh yeah, I know who he is. Just like all of that. When he walks up to Mayweather and he calls him Captain. It's like man, you think Anthony Montgomery looks like Scott Bakula? Like you can't even tell these two men apart, and you're the doctor who's about to like perform some medical procedure. That this guy was insistent he needed his real doctor to work on him, and yeah, he's got the guy you can't even like tell him apart from Scott Bakula. It's like that. I don't know. That's funny. It's John Billingsley's great at all of that.
I think that I had lost my goodwill for the episode by that point, or I was losing it. And so it didn't work for me, I'm afraid. John Billy, like when you describe it, it sounds funny to me. But I was watching it and I was like,
yeah,
move along.
We can watch it in isolation some point after you've forgotten it after some time, and then maybe you'll laugh at it then.
Hey, Father, I have a sort of related question, just sort of a general question about Risa. Although it's iconic, is there a really good Risa episode? Even one?
How do you feel about the first one?
Is that the one with Picard and Vosh?
Captain's Holiday.
It's okay. I like it. And I like Vosh as a character, even though I think that she never really quite got they never quite used her as well as they could have. But I guess that's my favorite.
There's a little bit of Risa in the game, in the opening of the game. Riker acquires the game, the game that you put on and you put like the discs in the cone and the visor that you put on.
Yeah, when is that?
Riker gets the game on Risa in the opening of the episode.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this is what the people are up to down there. I know I didn't like the DS9 episode where Worf went and joined the.
And then Michael Dorn comes back to direct this one. So.
Yeah. Ouch.
And that one was directed by a Trek actor too, because Renee Auberjonois directed the DS9 Risa episode. So, but I, even though they're not good, I still kind of have fun watching them. But this one, I forgot how bad it was, even though I just watched this a couple of times 7 years ago. It shocked me, just the how it sounds in 2023. Just some of the dialogue they were saying, but and the Flock stuff makes me laugh though, and the Hoshi stuff was fun. Jill was saying how she loved that Hoshi left her universal translator behind, and if she had taken it with her, then the rendezvous that she has with this guy wouldn't have happened. But that's nice. Yeah, you're someplace for 2 days and 2 nights, so you don't want to fall in love, but you find someone who's the right person for the moment. That's I don't know. I thought it was it was a good, healthy. I'm glad that I was exposed to this as a teenager watching TV, watching media. I'm glad that I saw the healthy sex life as well as the problematic stuff that Trip and Malcolm were up to.
Which for me was I got that through TNG, where I would see Riker or Troy or somebody or Worf have casual relationships and healthy relationships that were, they had their dramatic turns and stuff, but they were also shown to be mostly pretty healthy and, very consensual and all that. So I feel like TNG came through for me there.
Well, I guess we're ready for the final episode we're discussing of Season 1 of Star Trek Enterprise.
Yep.
Our season finale, Shockwave, written by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga, and directed by Alan Krecker. After apparently causing the destruction of an alien colony, the Enterprise is called back to Earth. Archer learns via Daniels that the Suliban are trying to sabotage Enterprise's mission. So we have Daniels back, we have more Suliban, more temporal Cold War. We have the crazy ending with the cliffhanger of Archer in the post-apocalyptic 31st century. I don't know how well you said you didn't remember the late season stuff that well. What do you think about revisiting this one after seeing it again for the first time in a long time?
It was a nice switch after the previous one. I thought it was to me a quite good episode that maybe could have been great. But like has a few weaknesses for me. And I'll say this: they're pretty straightforward weaknesses. I thought that the opening was very intense, where they oh, there's this blood on our hands. We've lost the colony. And I was pretty sure that that wasn't gonna be the case. That there was some setup, but that does get resolved pretty quickly. The main issue I had was that the cool stuff that really Archer goes into command mode and kicks some ass in the second half of the episode, but he's really following the playbook that Daniels gave him. And it felt like I wanted him to be, have like worked up some more of that on his own. Even if he was just
funny.
synthesizing Daniels's info to come up with the plan, it felt like, and I guess he did. Like he still came up with the plan. I don't know actually.
No, Daniels gives it all to him, but that's what I liked about it, is like it feels earned to me, because Archer has been struggling like all season long trying to figure all of this out the first time, making history with every light year. Is like they make fun of the slogan in this episode of the catchphrase, but I kind of feel sorry for him when he's the guy trying to figure it out. He's the pioneer doing all this for the first time. He's the Lewis and Clark. He's the guy who had the balls to be like, oh yeah, I'll be the first guy to go out there in a warp 5 starship, and I got to get all of this right to like set the record straight, that humankind, that mankind, that my engineer father and all the rest of us, like, we have the right to be out here. And then he's got to deal with like all these assholes from the future and like this temporal Cold War. It's like he's got enough on his plate already. He's just dealing with like the actual 22nd century. He doesn't need all this extra stuff. So I feel like it's earned when Daniels comes in, and the example that I thought of in like 2002 was like he has like the game guide book. You know how like there would be like video games, and then like if the game was too hard, you could buy the little guide magazine that like tells you how to do everything. It's like, oh, it's like this is like actually like an appropriate time for like the protagonist to have that. It doesn't feel like he's cheating. I thought that was kind of cool. And then like when T'Pol's all skeptical about the Vulcan science directorate doesn't believe time travel is possible, and then he's like, how the hell did I know how to build the thing to detect Suliban stealth ships, take us directly to where one is, go on board, steal their information, and you're telling that time travel is still impossible? It's like he does all that stuff and like people still question it. I don't know. I thought they found a way to make that work. So
Father, I never liked those guidebooks. Maybe that
I made fun of the kids who bought one. So but I thought it was cool that like it made sense here. But
well, it felt weird to me that Archer was as confident as he was when really he should that was like it was all unexplored territory. But the actual scenes themselves were great. Like that was just like the dopest action scenes that they've had on the show. There was like
I think I buy it. Like Daniels taking him back in time 10 months. Like okay, he believes Daniels now. He's like,
sure,
this guy can do some. This guy can clearly time travel. Like,
yeah.
And I think they actually like show you like Archer, like, was it all a dream? Then he's like, no, how do I know Phlox? And then it's like, wow, this is the exact conversation I had with Trip. I thought that I'm kind of impressed, because this episode is written solely by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga. I was like, oh, this is like the time you spent your time focusing on this stuff. And that's why you were saying like you didn't have time for like everything else that you had to rush. But I don't know. I have a lot of respect for this episode. I actually forgot how much I liked it, because spoiler alert for season 2. I don't think I like the second half of the story as much, and so that's kind of always like skewed my memory of how much I like this one. But there's a lot in this finale that worked for me.
What was I gonna say? I felt like honestly, Archer probably could have explained himself better to T'Pol. But time was of the essence. As a side thing, this was another episode where I liked the some dramatic music, both in the somber early portions where they were, Archer really, and then good acting by Bakula, by the way, when he was like really seemed broken by the possibility that they had been responsible for the death of the colonists.
Yeah.
And there was some good music to accompany that. The in the comments, I noticed someone was saying, what was it about? Something about DePaul. Enterprise seems to go. They try to make DePaul suffer since they don't have O'Brien, and I do think that's true. She's often the person who has to just.
They're only
deal.
just getting started beating her up. Yeah, there's some stuff I'm not looking forward to seeing in seasons 2 and 3 with her, but
that's too bad.
I'll say this though, T'Pol gets some good material in this episode. I kind of like the culmination of season 1, like the big arc, kind of being like a character thing, but like between Archer and T'Pol. When at the end, when he leaves her in command of the ship, I love how he says like, I advise you to maintain this course and heading. I like how he doesn't, like, he could have made that like his final order. He could be like, I'm leaving you in command, but my final order is you do this. But I love that vote of confidence that he gives in her when he says like, I advise you, because then it's like, oh wow, like she's in command now. He's not ordering her, he's just advising her. I guess I have to listen to her. I guess she's the captain now. That sends a message to the rest of the crew. And so I love like that level of respect, because T'Pol really had to earn Archer's respect. We see in Broken Bow he has zero respect for her.
Sure.
And over the course of the season, that we see that like that respect is clearly there in the scene.
She comes through in a lot of episodes, and I forgot to mention it, but in the episode with Clancy Brown, she does like I forget what was it she did to like ensure that he helped out, like because he was not gonna help them rescue him.
When he said, "Oh, they're not my responsibility," and I think she just like talked tough to him, like, "Oh well, it is now, because now those guys think we're on your side, so you have to help us."
Yep, she saved their ass there, and then took her risk that was very un-Vulcan like to go like under that planet's radar and race around and all that stuff.
What did you think of like the Daniels scene at the end when Archer's there in the 31st century?
Good cliffhanger. I like Daniels as a character. I see that that's funny. Like when I had only seen him really seriously the one time, or his time in that episode, in the previous episode where we really got to see a lot of him. I enjoyed his enigmatic thing where he was like, well, if you can still call it Earth, and, all those kind of things he would say. I see that's now, like, that's his central character thing, is to always, like, answer a question with a question. But I like him.
When Archer is like, didn't Silic kill you? And he's like, yes, in a matter of speaking. It was like, what does that mean? Like, I'm of the belief that, like, that was, like, a holographic projection that it's kind of implied. So I guess, like, I don't know, like, that projection, like, had, like, a life. Like, maybe that projection went to, like, Starfleet Academy on Earth or whatever. So, like, that cover, that alias has been killed as far as Daniels is concerned. I don't know if that's the case. If Daniels is even his actual name, who knows? But I do like the actor who plays him. I've always wanted this guy to come back in some of the modern Trek shows. I think if they ever show more of the Temporal War, they should definitely, like, bring this guy back.
Yeah, it'd be fun. They if they embrace that a little bit, the big shared universe, and they like, every week on the Ready Room, if they're like, oh, this references these 3 episodes, and they would actually give a little bit of a push, like maybe you might want to go watch these 3 episodes, and see.
They do that.
Do they actually show clips and stuff from them?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the subject, but
I guess what I'd say is a bigger push than what they have been doing, where it was like built in every week. You'd be like, oh, there's usually, some, not every week.
Yeah, but they would do like those little like montage videos with like that lady narrating who'd be like, I'm trying to think of one. They did one of the changelings in the Dominion.
My point is to like actually like try and create a tradition wherein people go and watch them, not just say, "Hey, you might have noticed this."
They if you follow the social media on the official Star Trek like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, a lot of times they'll say like, watch
these in advance.
Say there's like but after the episode, like say like they show like some Trill stuff in Discovery. They might show like here's some Trill episodes from Deep Space Nine streaming now on Paramount Plus.
There you go.
But the Daniel stuff at the end, I agree with you. It's a good cliffhanger, and it was again a thing very evocative of 9/11. It looks like Ground Zero. This
Right.
imagery of like these skyscrapers and ruins. That was a very common image. That like
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that mentioned somewhere, and I was like, oh, because I am watching it out of that context now. I'm sure I thought that originally, but I'd forgotten it. And so now I just see it, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool effect. It looks like a devastated city, but I don't immediately think of 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of watching this, like it really like takes me back to that period in time, 2001, 2002, because it was a pretty like crazy time, and reminds me a lot of stuff going on in the world now. But it had a huge influence on Enterprise. I think Enterprise is very much a product of the aughts, of the early aughts, of that early 21st century.
I was worried it was going to be a product in a kind of worse way that, we'd see.
Oh, it will be.
I mean, I'll see it when I see it then. Right now,
But then it gets better.
Right now, like, they brought up, torture in the episode with the Nausicaan pirates, and Enterprise was like, stop that. They, bring up, vilifying an entire race, and Enterprise is like, stop that.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Right now, they are reacting in a way that I want to see to 9/11.
I agree. Strong agree, Dave. And there's a lot of stuff in here in season 1 that we should praise and should point out. Like, oh, they actually have like a lot of good stuff going on here. And Jill's pointing out in the live audience in the comments about the mining colony, and it looks like the miners aren't going to be saved. And that is actually something that I complained about in this episode for years, about like, oh, they mentioned they come up with like these Trek species, like the Paragons here, and they have this matriarchal society, and Archer is always curious about meeting these people, and then we never actually see the interactions. They're always like off screen. They have like all these cool like first contact encounters off screen. But I'm thinking here, what if those people don't actually die, and that's why we never see them? Because Brannon Braga claims these days, like, his plan was to eventually reveal that the future guy, the shadowy future guy that gives orders to the Suliban Silic, that he is Archer. And I've talked about that before, that was Brannon Braga claims that was like their big reveal that they would have done eventually had the show gotten more seasons. And I've been skeptical of that, because in the season 4 DVD commentaries, they kind of talk about the temporal Cold War, like, oh, that's over, we're never going to go back to that. But what I think now, rewatching this stuff kind of more thoughtfully, is that, oh, I think they were considering that a possibility back in season 1. I think they actually were thinking of like, maybe this is when we reveal it's Archer, because the dialogue here, the future guy talking to Silic when they have their little meeting, he does tell him, he says, bring Archer to me, but leave the rest of the ship alone. He never says like anything like dangerous or threatening to the rest of the Enterprise crew. Just says like, bring Archer over here to talk to me. And maybe that would have been like a cool reveal in like the season 2 premieres. Like you premiere it with like Archer face to face with like old man Archer from the future, who bosses around the Sulibans. And what if he never killed those colonists? That was all just like a trickery. Like he's just trying to like end the mission for some other reason that we don't know about yet. And that would have been cool if they had gone that route.
I will have to think about this more, but I think I'm very glad they didn't. To me, I don't want the first sort of Enterprise captain's his sort of main early foe to have been future self of him. Like, that's, I don't know, like, I want it to be, I want these stories to cover other ground and not do the Superman versus, his evil counterpart story.
Then you clear a lane for like Dean Stockwell to be like the actual main bad guy, and that would have been I would have been about.
For sure.
They could have brought in Ron Moore to showrun all of it, and instead of BSG, we would have had like this badass Star Trek Enterprise. But that's not the world that we live in. So that's this weird fantasy parallel timeline. But what we actually get, I still have a lot in future episodes of Enterprise. So when we go into these future seasons, there's a lot that I look forward to revisiting. But I'm kind of surprised at some of the stuff in season 1 that I appreciate more. Like this episode, for example, Shockwave. Like I have more appreciation of it now than I think I've had probably at any other point in its 22 years of existence.
I mean, again, it comes on the heels of a bad episode.
I did really like it when it first aired. I was kind of excited about like the going into season 2, but there's a lot of other things. I was really excited about season 2 of the show for a lot of things. But we,
Fatheree, I have to again reference. I think this is one of the cooler actions, sequences that they've had in Star Trek. There's a lot of good action in it. Yeah. The way that they film it is not, usually Trek action is a little kind of slow paced, honestly, a little stodgy when you have like a phaser battle or something. And here they were filming it a little more Hollywood style, like it was like a commando team and the camera's moving fast and they're running through and they're kind of doing cool tactics. I mean, what is it like? They actually phaser blast a section of the ship just to hit the hallway that the Suliban are hiding out in, and I was like, "That's dope."
They have stun grenade, but that's what I think is so good. As like,
the stun grenades.
If you're gonna give them like the future like play by play, if you're gonna do like the Bill and Ted, go back in time and just give you all the secret information you need. It's like you should be able to just like run through here perfectly on like the first try, So I liked that. It's like,
right.
Of course, that's how it would work, but it was well realized.
Anything else?
I
want to give a special compliment to Joel, who, per your future Archer theory, he thinks that future Archer is just trying to make water polo a bigger thing.
I mean, yeah, we don't know. I don't know what Brandon Braga's idea, or if he ever thought up one of like what exactly Archer is trying to do. But I can see now, like looking back, I can see like, oh, future guy actually like he didn't actually hurt anyone or kill anyone or anything. So I could kind of see how it could have like made sense that like.
He felt like he did a lot of sinister stuff, and he was like, "Oh, take his eyes out" or whatever.
But he was removing from Silic was just like the genetic modification, so he never actually like does any like physical harm.
You could have made the case for me, but I'll have to see how things play out. I know this. I may not be wild about what they do, but I'd have to be convinced on the Archer topic.
I mean, they wrap up their temporal Cold War where they just never say who Silic's boss was. It was just like some dude he took orders from. But that's not necessarily a pressing question that I need answered. But if any future story wants to reveal who the future guy is, I'm sure Terry Metalis has an idea. I'm sure that's something he would do if they gave him a show. It seems like that kind of idea. But I think someone might actually get around to it at some point. But it
seems like the kind of thing
priority.
You could sneak into a Lower Decks episode too. The last desperate gasp of whoever this guy is after he lost the temporal Cold War.
Yeah, I think if you were going to do it on Lower Decks, you'd have to like play it as a joke.
They have serious stuff on there.
Yeah, but I don't know. You wouldn't bring in future guys like a serious thing. It's like if they were going to do something serious, you take something. It's like you do an inversion. You take something that's stupid in the rest of Star Trek, and then
like the Packlids.
Yeah, and then treat them seriously like a big threat. So I think they would have to do that. But I think that'd be the Lower Decks way to go about it. But just some thoughts on like the season overall. Now that we're at the end of season 1, I talked a lot about how Rick Berman and Brandon Braga were just like they really could have used that extra year between Voyager and Enterprise, and how if they could have built up a writer's room, built up a show Bible, like just planned the writing a bit more. I think I think that would have really helped them because they were so hands-on in this season. There was a 7-episode gap that Dave and I talked about a lot, like last week. That was the week of the 3 weeks we discussed season 1. I think the middle week was the one, Tex-Trek number 171. That was the one that we enjoyed season 1 of Enterprise the most, and that's when Rick and Branham were like the least hands-on. But I don't totally blame them because they're the sole writers on Broken Bow and Shockwave, on the premiere and the season finale, and those are two of my favorites in the entire season.
And they had hands in other episodes I liked in this season too. But yes, it seems like there's some elements that are a little bit just beyond their capacity.
And they were under an extraordinary amount of pressure, and the ratings were going down, 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 and the people who had been very, very protecting and loving and nurturing of Star Trek in the Paramount corporate structure were getting like moved around, and instead they were like having to answer to the whims of the UPN network. That wasn't particularly like friendly to them, and yeah, so I don't envy the situation they were in, but it was they definitely did not have it easy, and there's a lot of Enterprise that works really well, and I just wish that they could have had that help on the writing side.
For my part, the thing that I'm comparing it to mentally is the first season of Voyager, another, the other show I think maybe aside from Discovery now that probably gets the most critiques. And I feel like for me, I'm going to say I like the Enterprise first season better, but they actually have somewhat similar hit-miss ratios to me. I think it's just the Voyager lows were lower, but they have similar highs, and I have had a really good time with this season. I'll say this, even the episodes I wasn't big on, I'm still enjoying watching these characters and seeing new Trek and seeing, I told you that I love all of the continuity, interconnectivity that's part and parcel of this show. It makes it feel a little bit more real to me. So yeah, I've been having a good time with it.
Well, come back next week. We don't have any more Star Trek Enterprise Season 1 to talk about. We'll get to Season 2 eventually, but next week Dave and I are actually going to be talking about a different show that's not even Star Trek. We're going to be talking about Black Mirror Season 4, Episode 1, USS Callister, directed by Toby Haynes, who you might recall as the main director on Andor. He's recently been recruited by Paramount to work on a possible 14th Star Trek film, or maybe it'll be the 15th. They said there's multiple movies they're working on. Who knows if any of them will get made? But that's the big Star Trek episode of Black Mirror, and I think that'll be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah. Talk about some a Trek that breaks the rules, and like Galaxy Quest, which we watched recently. Dave and I went and saw Galaxy Quest at like a screening of it. With Rachel. Yep. That was very fun. Black Mirror has known for a much darker heart than Galaxy Quest has. So that'll be interesting to talk about, and people should go revisit that episode.
You want to talk about Galaxy Quest too? Like, why are we bringing that? We could do that. We do that like the week after talking about USS Callister. I think I called it McAllister a second ago, but I guess it's just Callister. Yeah. I'm looking at my notes. Wait, we could talk about Galaxy Quest after that, I guess. Sure. The unofficial the movie that's so beloved by Trekkies that it's kind of accepted almost into the canon practically. So if y'all want us to do that, how about that? If you want us to talk about Galaxy Quest, then come listen to us talk about USS Callister next week, and tell us that you want to hear us talk about Galaxy Quest, because we're not going to do it unless people ask for it. Yeah, by Grabthar's hammer, you got to let us know. Yeah, for sure. But that should be fun, and of course we'll have plenty of Star Trek to talk about later in the year with the final season of Discovery, the return of Prodigy on its new home, Netflix, which is where you can watch Black Mirror, by the way, if people need to go watch the USS Callister episode. And eventually we'll have a Section 31 movie and Strange New World Season 3 and a Starfleet Academy show and all kinds of stuff in the future. And we'll get around to Enterprise Season 2 probably later this year. It just depends on the new show programming and when things come out. Right on. Until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.